Welcome to your deep dive, ready to explore creativity.
Sounds fascinating. Let's get into it.
Perfect. Today, we're guided by Ed Catmull's Creativity, Inc. You're really interested in how creativity works, and Catmull's journey at Pixar, well, it's a fantastic way to see it in action. It's like getting a sneak peek behind some of the most groundbreaking animated films ever made.
Yeah, and it's not just about the films themselves, but also the environment that cultivated them.
Exactly.
I mean, it's interesting how Catmull's story, it's not just about art, and it's not just about technology, but about how the two intertwine. They create something entirely new at that intersection.
Yeah, and the book starts with him as a kid, and he's just captivated by Walt Disney around.
Of course. I mean, who wasn't?
But then he was also fascinated by Albert Einstein, so it's interesting.
It is. That duality, I think, is really key here. He was drawn to this magic of creation, but also this logic of understanding how things worked,
Yeah.
It makes me think about when I was a kid.
I know. We all have our childhood inspirations. But going back to Catmull, I mean, do you remember that aha moment he describes when he's watching a Disney episode about storytelling?
Oh, yeah. That episode, what was it called? Where did the stories come from?
Yeah, I think that's it.
It really sparked something in him. Like, he was fascinated by how, these animators, they could convey such deep emotion. And it was just, lines on paper. Really simple tools.
But instead of going straight into art, he went for physics and then computer science. Kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, you'd think so. But if you really think about it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
His art teacher even noticed how engrossed he would get in his work. He would just lose track of time.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
And to me, that suggests a mind that's, wired for both creative expression, but also this meticulous observation, right?
So maybe those two paths, seemingly separate, were actually kind of converging all along.
Exactly. And, while he initially felt like his art skills weren't quite enough for Disney,
Yeah.
his background in physics and computer science, well, that led him to computer animation, which was this really new field back then.
And that's where Ivan Sutherland pops up. He was kind of a pioneer in computer graphics.
Oh, yeah, he was a legend. He created Sketchpad, which was the grandfather of all these computer drawing programs we use today. Can you imagine? He really paved the way.
Wow.
And Catmull was actually studying computer language design at the time. But after meeting Sutherland, boom, his focus just completely shifted.
That's a powerful reminder that sometimes, one encounter, you can just change your whole trajectory. You know what I mean?
100%.
It's amazing.
And that shift, that led to Hand, his first animated short film.
Oh, yeah.
And imagine this, the dedication involved. He built a plaster model of a hand, covered it in triangles and polygons, and then he had to input all those coordinates by hand into a program.
Wow.
Could you imagine the patience?
All for a 4-minute film?
It took him 10 weeks.
Wow. And what's the takeaway here for someone who's, interested in the nuts and bolts of creative processes?
I mean, it's about understanding the limitations of your tools, but also finding creative ways to overcome them. Computers back then, they really struggled with curved surfaces. So Catmull's work on subdivision surfaces, it was groundbreaking, really. It paved the way for smoother, more realistic animation.
So even in those early days, it was about pushing the boundaries, right?
Pushing the boundaries of what was possible.
And it even ended up being featured in Future World, that movie in 1976.
Yes. And while that was exciting, what's even more significant, I think, is his philosophy of open collaboration. In a field where secrecy was kind of the norm, he chose to share his research at NYIT.
That's so interesting. Why would he do that? Wouldn't you want to keep your breakthrough secret?
Well, you might think so, but Catmull believed that, knowledge grows when it's shared. He saw how secrecy just stifled creativity and really just slowed progress down.
Wow, that's a very different way of looking at it.
Yeah, and that open approach that really became a cornerstone of Pixar's culture later on.
And that brings us to Pixar, right? I'm curious to know how his early experiences shaped their whole approach to creativity.
Yeah. This is where things get really interesting, I think. He actually draws a parallel between Pixar and Toyota. Of all things.
Toyota, like the car company. What's the connection there?
Well, it's about applying the principles of Japanese manufacturing to the creative process. who is this quality control expert that like revolutionized manufacturing. He believed in empowering workers, to identify problems and continuously improve the process rather than just relying on top-down management.
So instead of just following orders, everyone is kind of responsible for quality?
Right, exactly.
Mm.
But how does that apply to making films, animated films especially? At Pixar, that meant fostering a culture where everyone felt, empowered to actually contribute to improving the final product. Not just the directors, not just the executive.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like a collective sense of ownership, right?
Exactly.
But speaking of executives, you can't really talk about Pixar without mentioning Steve Jobs.
Oh, true, true.
I mean, what role did he play in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, Jobs played a crucial role, but not always in predictable ways, right?
Okay, yeah.
I mean, he was known for having strong opinions, very strong.
Right.
But he was also willing to change his mind when presented with, logical, passionate arguments.
So even he, needed to be open to new ideas.
Absolutely. But, I also remember reading about this near disaster with Toy Story 2.
Mhm.
Like, it almost derailed the entire film.
Oh, right, that's right, yeah.
And this is where the concept of the beast comes into play.
The beast.
Yeah. Catmull uses this term to describe how different departments within a company, they can, like, inadvertently stifle creativity by just focusing too much on their own narrow goals.
Ah, so it's like they're working at cross purposes almost, like unintentionally creating these obstacles.
Exactly. Like in Toy Story 2, a bunch of technical mishaps, conflicting priorities, they almost led to the film being lost entirely.
Wow. That must have been so stressful for everyone involved.
It was.
Yeah.
And that's where, one of Pixar's most valuable tools comes in, and that's the brain trust.
Okay, the brain trust. Now, what is that?
It's this group of really experienced filmmakers who offer, candid and constructive feedback to directors throughout the filmmaking process.
Mhm.
And their sole focus is on making the story the best it can be.
So it's not about catching errors. It's about, like, elevating the story.
Exactly. And the brain trust, they played a pivotal role in saving Toy Story 2. They suggested, like, major changes to the story, like adding Wheezy and Jessie.
Wait, those characters weren't in the original version?
Nope.
Wow. I can't imagine the film without them.
And it just goes to show you the power of collaboration and brainstorming. Like Wheezy, he introduces this idea that even, beloved toys, they can be discarded.
Right.
And then Jessie's story about being abandoned, that adds another layer to Woody's dilemma.
Right. So it deepens the whole emotional impact.
Exactly. And I think it's just a really great example of how being open to feedback and iterating on ideas can just, dramatically improve a project. But I'm also curious about how they deal with the inevitable setbacks, the mistakes that happen in any creative process, really.
Yeah. Everyone makes mistakes.
Well, Pixar has this other practice called postmortems. There are these meetings they hold after each film to analyze, what worked and what didn't.
Postmortems.
Yeah, no, it sounds a bit intense, but are they like dissecting what went wrong?
Yeah, that's kind of what it sounds like to me.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's more about honestly reflecting on the entire process, both the good and the bad, to learn and grow. It's like a way to turn experience into wisdom.
So not dwelling on failures, but more like extracting valuable lessons.
That's it. And this all connects to a larger point that Catmull makes about embracing failure. He argues that we're conditioned to associate failure with shame.
Right.
But that can actually stifle creativity.
So being open to feedback, iterating on ideas, embracing failure, it seems like a completely different way of thinking about the creative process.
It is. He challenges us to rewire our thinking. He uses this analogy of learning to ride a bike.
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect to master it without, falling a few times.
No, of course not.
It's part of the process.
Exactly.
And he suggests, applying that same mindset to creative endeavors. Mistakes, they're inevitable. And often they're the best teachers.
Mhm. So it's about creating an environment where those falls are seen as valuable, right?
Exactly. Not something to be ashamed of.
That's a really interesting perspective.
It is.
I'm really starting to rethink my whole approach to creativity here, but I'm curious about how they actually create that kind of environment at Pixar. What are some of the specifics?
Well, one way is by fostering this psychological safety, where people feel comfortable taking risks, sharing their ideas without fear of judgment
Right.
or punishment.
Right, because if you're afraid to speak up, I mean, you're not going to be creative, are you?
Exactly. You need to feel safe to experiment, to fail, to learn from your mistakes. And Catmull highlights several practices that contribute to this culture.
Like what? I'm really curious to hear what they do.
Well, one example is their use of dailies. These are daily meetings where animators present their work in progress and they get feedback.
Okay, so it's built-in time for collaboration, right?
Yes. And not just for, identifying errors, but for brainstorming solutions, pushing the work to its full potential.
It's like a built-in support system almost.
Absolutely. And it reinforces that idea that everyone's voice matters and that the best ideas, they can come from anywhere.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together, like the brain trust, the postmortems, the dailies.
Right.
They all contribute to this culture of collaboration and continuous learning.
Exactly. It's a system where everyone feels, empowered to contribute and where mistakes are seen as opportunities.
Not setbacks.
Exactly.
This is fascinating stuff.
It is.
It's making me rethink my own approach to creativity.
I'm glad to hear that.
But before we go too far down that path, I'm curious about some of the other tools and techniques they use to nurture creative thinking.
Well, one thing that Catmull talks about is the importance of research tricks. Where filmmakers, they immerse themselves in the world that they're creating.
Like going on location.
Exactly. For Ratatouille, for example, they spent time in Michelin star restaurants observing the chefs, the atmosphere, the sounds, the smells.
So it's about going beyond like the superficial research.
Right. And cruelly understanding the nuances.
That's such a great example.
It is. It shows how these experiences can spark creative inspiration,
Yeah.
but also add authenticity to the work.
Absolutely. And Catmull also emphasizes the power of limitations in the creative process.
He does.
Which is kind of counterintuitive, because I always thought creativity was about limitless possibilities.
Yeah, it is counterintuitive, right? But he talks about this phenomenon, he calls it the beautifully shaded penny. It's the tendency for artists to obsess over these tiny, tiny details that may not even be noticeable in the final product.
So it's about recognizing that sometimes less is more, right?
Exactly.
Mm.
Understanding those constraints, focusing your energy on the elements that really matter, the things that really drive the story.
It's a great reminder for all of us, really. Where are you investing your time and your energy?
And speaking of focusing energy,
Mm.
I read about Pixar's short film program.
Oh, yeah.
And Catmull describes it as this, valuable training ground for future directors.
Yeah.
It's a space for experimentation. They're given this creative freedom and encouraged to take risks without the pressure of a full-length film.
It's like a playground almost.
It is, exactly. And it's resulted in some truly innovative and memorable films. Do you remember Gary's Game? That short film that won an Oscar?
Oh, yeah. I love that one.
It features this elderly man playing chess against himself, and there's no dialogue.
Right.
And the humor, it just comes from those subtle shifts in his personality as he switches sides.
And it's so brilliant.
It is. And it's a testament to how, creative constraints can lead to innovative storytelling.
Yeah.
It speaks to that larger point that Catmull makes about learning to see.
Learning to see. Now, what does he mean by that?
He uses this example of perceiving, the color blue in a lake, but then when you look through a pinhole, you see all these different colors.
Oh, wow.
Right. It's about recognizing how our brains, they fill in gaps and distort our perception. So we have to challenge ourselves to see the world with fresh eyes.
Wow. So it's about actively engaging with the world, not just passively observing.
Exactly. Cultivating that sense of curiosity and wonder.
This is incredible. I mean, it's really making me rethink my whole approach to creativity.
I'm glad to hear it.
But there's so much more to explore.
Yeah.
In Catmull's book.
Oh, absolutely. From his insights on managing creativity in a large organization, all the way to his thoughts on the future of animation. There's so much to cover.
We were just talking about how the principles in Creativity Inc. can apply to, well, all sorts of creative fields, not just animation. And I remember you mentioning, how fascinating these mental models were. Can we maybe explore a few more of those?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's amazing how these different analogies can highlight different aspects of the creative process. One that really stood out to me was from Byron Howard, a director at Disney, and he uses this phrase, "If you think, you stink."
If you think you stink, that sounds a little harsh. I mean,
Right.
where did he even get that from?
He actually learned it from his guitar teacher. And the idea is that sometimes you just got to let go of overthinking. Just trust your instincts.
I can actually relate to that. When I'm writing, sometimes I get so caught up in trying to make, every sentence perfect that I totally lose the flow of the story.
It's like that concept of being in the zone,
Yeah.
that state of effortless creativity where ideas just seem to flow naturally. And overthinking, it can really block that flow.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Are there any other mental models from the book that really resonate with you?
Well, remember Pete Docter, who compared directing to running through a tunnel. He also uses this analogy of navigating a maze.
Oh, right. He's the director of Up and Inside Out.
Yes.
What's the maze analogy about?
So instead of, frantically searching for the exit, he suggests, placing your fingers along one wall and just slowly feeling your way through, noting the path you've traveled.
I love that. That's such a great way to visualize, the process of exploration. It's like saying, don't panic. Just keep moving forward and trust that you'll find your way.
Exactly. It's about being methodical and observant, even when you're in uncharted territory.
And I bet that takes, a lot of patience too. It's so tempting to just want to rush to the finish line, but sometimes you just have to slow down and pay attention to those little details.
Absolutely. Then there's Rich Moore, the director of Wreck-It Ralph, and he visualizes directing as riding a roller coaster.
Okay, that one sounds a bit more exciting.
Right.
What's he getting at with that?
Well, he embraces the fact that there will be, these exhilarating highs, but also these stomach churning lows. But he trusts that the ride, it will eventually come to a satisfying end.
So it's about accepting that the creative process is inherently unpredictable, full of twists and turns.
Exactly. And it's a good reminder that those dips and drops, those are all part of the journey, and they can even make the final destination more rewarding.
It's a great way to reframe, those moments of doubt and uncertainty that inevitably come up in any creative endeavor, really.
Exactly. And finally, we have Bob Peterson, another key figure at Pixar, and he connects his mental model to his experience with meditation. He finds that the practice helps him, calm his mind, focus his attention.
So it's about finding ways to kind of manage the mental and emotional demands of creative work.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
He doesn't explicitly say that, everyone should meditate, but he does highlight the importance of finding those practices that help you, stay grounded and centered, especially when you're facing challenging, creative problems.
It's about cultivating that inner resilience, that ability to bounce back from setbacks and stay focused on the long game.
Exactly. It seems like all these mental models, despite their diversity, they share this common thread. They provide a framework for understanding and accepting those inherent uncertainties of creative work.
Right. It's like they're giving you this mental map to navigate those uncharted waters.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about the practical side of things. How do we actually foster a culture that encourages, that creativity and innovation, especially in a larger organization?
Right, because we've been talking about these mental models, which are kind of individual tools,
Yeah.
right? But what about the collective environment?
Yeah.
How do we create a space where creativity can actually thrive?
That's a key question that Catmull addresses in the book. And he stresses the importance of building a culture that values, transparency, collaboration, continuous learning.
So it's not just about, hiring talented people. It's about creating an environment where they can actually do their best work, right?
Absolutely. And a big part of that is creating what's called psychological safety.
Yeah.
It's a space where people feel comfortable, taking risks, sharing ideas, admitting mistakes without fear of judgment.
Right.
Or punishment.
I mean, if you're constantly worried about being wrong,
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably not going to be very creative, are you?
Exactly. You need to feel safe. Safe to experiment, to fail, to learn from your mistakes. And Catmull highlights some specific practices that help cultivate this kind of culture.
I'm all ears. What are some of the things that they do at Pixar to actually foster this psychological safety?
Well, we already touched on the dailies, those daily meetings.
Right.
Where animators, they They share their work in progress.
Yeah. And it's not just about, pointing out errors. It's about like collaborative problem solving.
Exactly, harnessing the collective wisdom of the team.
Yeah.
Another practice is the research trips. We talked about those
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
And sending filmmakers out into the world to experience their subject matter, firsthand. Not only does that spark creativity, but it also helps build camaraderie and shared understanding.
That's such a good idea. I bet it makes people feel more invested in the project too.
Absolutely. It's about fostering that sense of shared purpose,
Yeah.
and excitement. And then there's the way they embrace limitations,
Right.
which can be a surprisingly powerful catalyst for creativity.
Yeah, we talked about that beautifully shaded penny phenomenon, right?
Exactly.
How do they apply that principle at Pixar?
Well, one example is their short film program. By giving filmmakers constraints, limited time, budget, even dialogue, it forces them to think outside the box and come up with creative solutions.
It's like it becomes this fertile ground for innovation.
Right.
Like Jerry's Game, no dialogue, but so much emotional depth.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how constraints can lead to unexpected, creative breakthroughs. And all of this, of course, is underpinned by that concept of learning to see.
Right.
Exactly.
Challenging your assumptions, seeing the world with fresh eyes. But I'm wondering about, the role of randomness and change in the creative process. Catmull seems to really embrace those elements, which feels a bit counterintuitive.
I know, right? It seems like creativity would be all about, control and precision. But Catmull argues that embracing the unexpected, that can actually lead to some of the most innovative solutions. He tells this amusing anecdote about monkeys disrupting golf games in India.
Monkeys. What do monkeys have to do with creativity?
Okay, so these monkeys, they kept stealing golf balls and just wreaking havoc on the courses. The golfers, they tried everything to stop them, but nothing worked.
That sounds so frustrating. What did they do?
Well, eventually they had to adapt. They added a new rule. Play the ball where the monkey drops it.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. It's about learning to adapt and improvise when things don't go according to plan.
Exactly. And Catmull, he connects this to the limitations of human perception when it comes to randomness. Our brains are wired to look for patterns even when they don't exist.
Right. We crave that order, that predictability,
Yeah.
even in chaos. But sometimes those unexpected events, those can lead to new discoveries.
Absolutely. He introduces this concept of stochastic self-similarity, which is a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, that one sounds a little technical.
It is. It basically means that seemingly random events, they can reveal patterns when you view them at different scales.
Yeah.
Think about a coastline. From a distance, it might look smooth and continuous, right?
Right.
But as you zoom in, you see all these jagged edges and inlets.
Oh, okay. It's about perspective.
Exactly. And Catmull argues that our understanding of the past, it's often just as flawed as our predictions of the future. We tend to impose this order on events after they've happened, but in reality, things are often much more chaotic, much more unpredictable.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it? It's like saying, don't be so sure you know how things will turn out, or even how they already turned out.
Precisely. And it highlights the importance of staying open to new information, new perspectives, new possibilities, even when we think we have things figured out.
I like that. It's a reminder to stay humble and curious. But all this talk about uncertainty and change, it makes me think about leadership.
Right.
What does it take to lead a creative team, especially in a field that's constantly evolving?
That's a great question, and it's something that Catmull addresses directly in the book. He advocates for a more decentralized approach to leadership, where decision making is distributed rather than concentrated at the top.
So it's not about having a single visionary leader calling all the shots.
Right. He believes in empowering people at all levels of the organization to contribute their ideas and make decisions.
It's about trusting people to do their best work and giving them that autonomy to solve problems, to innovate.
Exactly. And that requires a culture of of candor,
Yep.
and open communication where people feel comfortable, voicing concerns, challenging the status quo. Catmull even talks about the need to embrace dissenting voices, those who are willing to point out potential flaws and push back against groupthink.
And that takes courage, doesn't it?
It does.
Both from the leader and the team members. And
Yeah.
it's easy to just go along with the crowd,
Yeah.
but it takes guts to speak up, to challenge assumptions.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And it's often those dissenting voices that lead to the most innovative breakthroughs. They help you see things from a different perspective.
Right, right. It reminds me of something that Catmull shared about Steve Jobs. He recounts a situation where Jobs was initially resistant to a particular presentation format, but ultimately changed his mind after listening to the team's arguments.
It's a great example of how even the most visionary leaders, they need to be open to feedback and willing to adapt their thinking.
It's about recognizing that good ideas, they can come from anyone, regardless of their position or their title.
Exactly. And it's about creating a culture where those ideas can be freely expressed and debated without fear of reprisal.
So it's not just about having, brilliant ideas. It's about having the courage to actually execute those ideas and the resilience to persevere when things inevitably get tough.
You nailed it. It's about fostering a culture of trust
Mm-hmm.
and respect,
Mm-hmm.
where people feel valued, supported, empowered to do their best work.
And all of that takes strong leadership, doesn't it? Someone who can set the tone, create the space, and empower the team.
Absolutely. It's about leading by example,
Mhm.
being open to feedback
Yeah.
and creating a culture where everyone feels like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
And Catmull also talks about the importance of the physical space in fostering creativity. I'm thinking of the iconic Pixar building. He refers to it as Steve's movie.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it's more than just a beautiful structure, right?
Yeah, that building is a testament to Jobs' vision and his understanding of how space can influence interaction
Really?
and creativity.
I'm curious to hear more about that. What's so special about the Pixar building?
So it was originally designed for Lockheed's top secret Skunk Works division,
Yeah.
which developed all these cutting edge aircraft.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, and Jobs, he saw a parallel between the work that was done at Skunk Works and the creative endeavors at Pixar.
Mm-hmm.
Both require this blend of innovation, ingenuity, a willingness to push boundaries.
So he wanted to create a space that embodied those same qualities.
Exactly. He wanted a space that encouraged, interaction, the free flow of ideas, and he paid such meticulous attention to detail, from the open staircase to the placement of communal spaces like the atrium where people naturally gather.
It's fascinating how intentional he was about designing the building to support the kind of work they were doing.
Like designing serendipity into the very fabric of the building.
Right. It's about creating an environment where these chance encounters can spark new ideas.
Mhm.
And all of this, of course, is in service of a larger goal, which is creating a legacy that endures.
Yes. Catmull, he believes the true measure of success. It isn't just about box office numbers or awards. It's about building something that has a lasting impact
On the world.
on the world.
It's about creating work that resonates with audiences, on a deep emotional level, work that inspires, work that delights, work that challenges us to see the world in new ways.
Right. And it's about building a company, a culture, a legacy that outlasts any individual project.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious about Catmull's views on the future of creativity. I mean, he's hesitant to make predictions, but he does offer some valuable insights on how to approach the unknown.
He does.
Okay, I'm all ears. What does he say about navigating, the future of creativity?
Well, he stresses the importance of staying curious, embracing change, challenging conventional thinking.
That makes sense. I mean, in a world that's constantly evolving, clinging to the old ways of doing things, that's a recipe for stagnation.
Exactly. And he also highlights the need to create spaces, where people feel safe to experiment, to fail, to learn from their mistakes.
Yeah, that theme keeps coming up. It's so central to his philosophy of creativity.
It is.
Mhm.
And ultimately, he argues that the most important thing is to foster a culture that values that values innovation
Mm-hmm.
and empowers people to bring their unique perspectives, their unique ideas to the table.
Those are some powerful takeaways. It sounds like he's advocating for a culture of continuous learning,
Yeah.
adaptation and collaboration.
You got it.
And I think those are valuable insights for anyone, regardless of their field or their profession.
Absolutely.
This has been incredibly insightful. I'm starting to see how these ideas could be applied in so many different contexts.
I'm glad to hear that.
I'm really looking forward to diving into more specific examples of how Catmull's insights can be put into practice in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah, me too. There's a lot more to uncover.
We've been deep diving into Ed Catmull's Creativity Inc. and I'm honestly struck by how much we've already unpacked, just about fostering creativity.
Yeah. It's amazing, right?
From embracing failure to like designing spaces that actually spark interaction. It's been a whirlwind.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have, but one thing that keeps coming up, is the importance of building a sustainable creative culture. Not just for one project, but for, the long haul.
Right, the long game.
Catmull, he spends a lot of time discussing how Pixar approaches this.
He does. It's a real challenge, right? I mean, creating, one blockbuster film, that's impressive, but maintaining that level of innovation over decades,
It's incredible.
that's a whole other ball game.
Yeah.
And Catmull emphasizes that it's about more than just, bricks and mortar or fancy technology. It all comes down to the people. He really emphasizes the importance of nurturing talent and creating an environment where individuals can thrive.
Okay, so it's not just about attracting, top talent. It's about making sure they stay and continue to grow.
Exactly.
I mean, what are some of the key ingredients for creating that kind of environment?
Well, one big thing Catmull highlights is the need to give people ownership of their work. Trust their instincts, empower them to make decisions and create that space for them to experiment and take risks.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's like that top-down command and control approach just doesn't work when it comes to nurturing creativity.
No, it really doesn't. It's about creating a more collaborative and empowering environment.
Hmm.
And Catmull, he also talks about the importance of mentorship and guidance. Having experienced filmmakers kind of, guide and support younger talent. It's crucial for passing on knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah.
Helping them navigate the challenges of the creative process.
Right. It creates a sense of continuity, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like a passing of the torch from one generation of creators to the next.
That's a great way to put it.
And Catmull, he also emphasizes the importance of diversity and inclusion. He believes that the best ideas come from bringing together people with different perspectives, different backgrounds, different experiences.
Absolutely. And creating that kind of inclusive environment, it's not only, ethically important, it's essential for generating truly innovative ideas.
It's like saying, if you want to solve complex problems, you need a diverse set of minds working on them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And ultimately, all of this is in service of a larger goal, creating a legacy that endures. Catmull, he believes that true success, it's not just about box office numbers or awards. It's about building something that has a lasting impact on the world.
So it's about creating work that resonates with audiences, on a deep emotional level, work that inspires and challenges us to see the world in new ways. That's a pretty ambitious goal.
It is ambitious, but I think that's what sets Pixar apart.
Yeah.
They're not just churning out entertainment. They're crafting stories that stay with you long after the credits roll.
I'm also curious about Catmull's thoughts on the relationship between, art and technology. Pixar's always been at the forefront of pushing the boundaries of what's possible with computer animation.
Hmm.
How does he see those two forces interacting?
Well, he believes that technology should always be in service of the story,
Yeah.
not the other way around.
Yeah.
It's about finding the right balance, using technology to enhance and elevate the storytelling, but never letting it overshadow the emotional core of the film.
It's like he's saying that technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
Yeah.
The key is to use it wisely,
Yeah.
purposefully.
Right. And he highlights the importance of collaboration between artists and technologists,
Yeah.
bringing together people with different skill sets and perspectives. It leads to the best results, whether it's solving, technical challenges or coming up with, innovative ways to tell a story.
It makes me think of that saying, two heads are better than one.
Hmm.
But in this case, it's more like an artist's eye and a programmer's brain. They can create magic together.
I love that. And this collaborative spirit, it extends beyond the walls of Pixar.
Yeah.
Catmull, he talks about the importance of sharing knowledge and collaborating with other studios and filmmakers.
So it's not about, hoarding secrets and competing fiercely. It's about recognizing that the animation industry as a whole, it benefits from this culture of openness,
Hmm.
collaboration.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes the importance of giving back to the community,
Yeah.
supporting, arts education and inspiring the next generation of storytellers.
It's like saying we're all part of this larger creative ecosystem, and we need to nurture and support each other.
Well said. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into Ed Catmull's Creativity Inc.,
Yeah.
I'm curious what resonates most with you as you think about your own, creative endeavors. What are you taking away from this exploration?
Hmm. I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of building a strong creative culture.
Yeah.
It's about embracing failure as part of the process and encouraging experimentation, risk taking.
Right.
Creating an environment where people feel safe to share their ideas, to
Mhm.
challenge a status quo, to learn from their mistakes.
It's about fostering that sense of trust and respect, where everyone feels valued and empowered to contribute their best work.
And it's about being intentional in designing systems and structures that support creativity and innovation, whether that's through regular feedback loops, dedicated time for experimentation, or even just a physical space that encourages collaboration. It's about creating the conditions for creativity to flourish.
Another key takeaway, I think, is the power of mental models.
Yeah.
As we've discussed, they can be incredibly helpful in navigating the uncertainties and anxieties of creative work.
Yeah.
Finding the right analogy, the right image, the right story to kind of frame your challenges. That can make all the difference in maintaining momentum and staying focused on your goals.
It's about finding a way to make sense of the chaos and keep moving forward even when things feel, a little overwhelming.
Right. And remember, the creative journey is rarely a straight line.
Yeah.
There will be detours, roadblocks, unexpected challenges, and the key is to embrace those challenges as opportunities,
Yeah.
For learning and growth.
Absolutely. It's about trusting your instincts and continuing to move forward, even when you can't, see the destination clearly.
Right. Catmull. He leaves us with a final thought-provoking question, something to ponder as you continue on your own creative journey. He asks, how can you create an environment that unlocks the creative potential of those around you? It's a challenge to think not just about our own individual creativity, but about how we can foster a culture that empowers others to innovate, to experiment, to bring their unique visions to life.
That's a great question to end on. It reminds us that creativity isn't, a solitary pursuit. It's a collective endeavor. And by creating the right conditions, we can unlock a world of possibilities, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into Creativity Inc. It's been an incredible journey,
It is.
and I hope our listeners have gained some valuable insights that they can apply to their own creative endeavors.
I hope so too. It's been a pleasure.
Until next time.